The news day continues here on One News Now. Business. I'm Maricel Halili. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. This just crossing our wires, President Bongbong Marcos appoints Rafael Consing Jr. as President and CEO of the Maharlika Investment Corporation. The appointment was announced by the Presidential Communications Office in a statement issued today, November 13. Consing is currently serving as Executive Director of the Office of the Presidential Advisor for Investment and Economic Affairs. The PCO says Consing's appointment ensures the timely delivery of investment projects and provides policy recommendations to advance the President's investment and economic agenda. Consing is also currently the Chief Financing Officer of the Razon-led International Container Terminal Services Incorporated. Analysts say the revised rules of the Maharlika Investment Fund failed to address risks to the financial stability of contributing state banks. Foundation for Economic Freedom President Calixto Chiquiamco says the IRR failed to tackle the contributions made by the Land Bank and Development Bank of the Philippines. Chiquiamco notes that the required lump sum contribution of the banks will result in a breach in capital ratios. Chiquiamco also says the MIF is, quote, a huge opportunity cost to the economy as it may take years to invest the funds. Ateneo de Manila University economics professor Leonardo Lanzona, meanwhile, notes that constraints imposed by the MIF will still be felt even if banks were allowed to remit on a staggered basis. Lanzona says the banks may only engage in short-term investments since the availability of resources will be shortened by remittances. However, new Maharlika Investment Corporation President and CEO Rafael Consing says the IRR is not a forum for outlining specific rules on these concerns. Consing warns that this move could restrict the flexibility of the incoming board to develop a risk management system best suited for the company. Consing also stood firm that the financial institutions can rebuild their respective Tier 1 capital through their retained earnings. Consing also believes international investors will continue to support the two banks given their track record for accessing the global capital market. Aside from Consing, other economic managers and officials also welcomed the revisions to the implementing rules and regulations of the Maharlika Investment Fund. They believe that the revised rules would ensure more independence for the fund's board. House Speaker Martin Romualdez says the Maharlika Investment Corporation's autonomy would allow more objective and effective decision-making. He also says this would make sure that the board's decisions are free from undue political influence, which is crucial for overseeing the fund. Budget Secretary Amina Pangandaman says the MIC's autonomy would allow it the flexibility to fulfill its mandate. She also says the new IRR would improve accountability and efficacy in carrying out the fund's provisions. The Finance Department, meanwhile, said that the emphasis on the board's independence allows it more headroom to form credible oversight and risk management bodies. President Marcos rejected the suggestion to make him the MIC chairman to make sure that investment decisions are free of political influence. The updated IRR, though, includes a provision allowing Marcos to reject recommendations of the MIC Advisory Board on vacant posts. It removes specific qualifications for determining other officers of the MIC. RCBC Chief Economist Mike Ricafort says that aside from being free of political influence, people handling the fund should also have a good track record of handling profitable funds.
Yan talaga yung career nila. Kaya yun din yung kailangan i-emphasize na marunong talaga sa fund management. Maganda yung track record na kumita. Unang-una, may kakayanan, hindi lang sa kakayanan, kundi may karanasan, may skills na kaya mag-manage ng funds. No? Kung baka hindi i-level up din yung qualifications.
Alex Escucha is a longtime banker and now president of the Institute of Development and Econometric Analysis, or IDEA, is here with us to discuss the issues on the Maharlika. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Maricel.
Sir, let's start with the breaking news. Around 10:50 this morning, the Presidential Communications Office announced that the President has appointed Rafael Consing as the President and CEO of the MIC. Ano po ang masasabi ninyo dito? Is this a good decision?
It's a very good choice to my mind. In fact, because the emphasis of the Maharlika as a strategic investment fund and not as a wealth fund, you're not just managing the money for financial returns. Joel Consing has been SVP and CFO of ICTSI. It is a very well-respected international operation with 32 terminals in 9 countries in 6 continents. No? And ICTSI is basically an infrastructure business. And what is the good thing to note is that not only is Joel CFO, he's also in charge of governance and compliance. And in fact, I had the pleasure of meeting him at the Governance Asia Awards in Hong Kong when I was also getting my own award as Best in Investor Relations. And he was getting his award for Best CFO for Investor Relations. So, ibig sabihin, yung capacity, yung mindset to conduct everything in a very transparent and good governance framework, I think is already there. And that makes to me a very good foundation for where we're moving from today.
Okay, so sir, given na maganda naman yung background based on your description, what do you think of the move of the president when it comes to amending the MIC? Kasi di ba before, wala naman clear na sinasabi whether or not may say yung presidente when it comes to appointment. But now, clearly nakalagay sa IRR na meron na siyang power to reject or approve appointments in the position or any positions in MIC. What do you think of this? Kasi before sinabi na ni Presidente na ayaw niya maging chairperson kasi ayaw niya ng politics. But then here is the IRR.
Let me correct that impression.
Okay, sir.
From
Go
the
ahead.
very start, the law, the original IRR, and the revised RRR says that the appointments have to be approved by the president. In other countries, pag wealth fund ka lang, yung fund management ka lang, usually is the central bank governor overseeing you. But in the case of a strategic investment fund where you're spending money for or investing in projects like infrastructure, it's usually the Ministry of Finance that is overseeing you. And in some countries, the overseeing body is in fact headed by the Prime Minister. No? So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just like even in the appointments to the Supreme Court in the past, even when the Judicial and Bar Council would submit a list of appointees to the President, there has been occasion in the past where the President says, kulang pa to, you might want to add some names from which I can pick from. At the end of the day, it is his command responsibility to select the right people.
Okay, sir, let's discuss about the situation of Land Bank and DBP because as we all know, these two banks have sought regulatory relief after making their contributions. Analysts are saying revised rules fail to address risks to financial stability of contributing state banks. But, newly appointed MIC President and CEO Rafael Consing said revised RRR is not the appropriate forum for outlining rules on board risk management oversight. What's your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that?
So I don't know what those analysts were referring to because I'm one of the few that have actually downloaded and printed the law 1954. The original IRR and the revised IRR. In fact, I wrote about right after my appearance here on October 16, I wrote in my Business World column kung gaano kabigat yung kain sa kapital ng Land Bank at DBP. especially DBP, which will be really below the capital requirements. And in that column, I suggested that a good way to do this is to stagger the contribution, especially of DBP. Kasi ang 25 billion ng DBP is supposed to be, you cannot exceed 25% of your equity. 25 billion is 25% of 100 billion. The DBP equity is only 77, less 10 billion, which is only 68. So talagang kulang siya. Okay. So for those analysts who say the IRR, the revised IRR does not address it, I don't know whether they read it exactly, because my own reading is that the original IRR said that the contributions of DBP and Land Bank shall be deposited to the account of the Treasurer of the Philippines for the benefit of the MIC within 5 days from the original IRR. Sa revised IRR, nawala na yung within 5 days na yon. No? And then in the next paragraph, it says, the details of the transfer of the contributions from the account of the treasurer to the MIC shall be discussed at the original organizational meeting of the board. Which means, to clarify, the contributions will take 2 steps. One, the money contribution of Land Bank and DBP will be transferred to their account in treasury. At that point, it's still a deposit nila, no? It will become a capital contribution only when the stock certificates or the shares attesting to their ownership of shares in the MIC, the corporation, will be issued. And remember that the General Banking Act also requires that such an investment should not exceed 25% of this equity, Section 24.2, and that in the last paragraph of that section, it also says that that such investment needs the prior approval of the Monetary Board of the BSP. In which case, kung hindi nila i-stagger yan, if they send it to the BSP for approval, the BSP can only approve the equity investment na hindi magsosobra sa 25% of their equity.
Okay, sir, meron pang another point na in-emphasize si Rafael Consing. He added that both DBP and Land Bank can further raise a variety of bonds to boost their liquidity and issue instruments in both the domestic and global capital markets. Will this be effective in enhancing their capital position?
It can boost their liquidity, but it will not boost their capital kasi nagkaroon kasi ng wrong impression yung mga nag-craft nitong law na nakita nila yung balance sheet. Yung investable loanable funds ng DBP is 1.3 trillion ng Land Bank. Yung DBP naman 850 billion. Therefore, the 50 and 25 billion is just a small percentage of that. They did not realize that when you make it as a capital contribution, hindi siya ibabawas sa loanable funds mo, ibabawas sa capital mo mismo, no? So that is the key there. So pagbawas na yung capital mo, the only way for them to recover is either make money and refrain from hinto muna sila pag-issue ng dividends, or ask for capital infusion from the national government. For both Land Bank and DBP, they have not been issuing dividends in the past. No? In fact, they have requested for dividend relief. So case in point, Land Bank in 2021 got a 27.5 billion infusion from the national government kasi kailangan nila yun to absorb all the costs of absorbing UCPB. If you remember, they merged with the DBP. With the UCPB. In the case of DBP, they haven't been issuing what you call dividends. And in fact, yung tinatawag na instruments, if you read the annual report of DBP, in the footnote to their audited audited financial statement, it says that on surface their published equity is about 77, 78 billion. But 10 billion of that is a Tier 2 capital note that will expire in November 20. Next week na. So bawas na yung capital nila. And that's why yung kain dun sa capital ratio nila, if you net that out, talagang malaki. They're down to 7.43%. Question, can they make enough money to build their capital to bring it to 10%? They will, but it will take them a long time, more than 3 years, I think, to do that.
Okay. Sir, we'll continue our discussion about the Maharlika. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll have Mr. Escucha after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Maricel Halili, and we still have Mr. Alex Escucha to discuss about the amendment of the implementing rules and regulations of the Maharlika Investment Fund. Sir, good morning once again. Let's talk about the audit committee. Consing also said, including senior executives on the audit committee, raises the risk that investors and the public may perceive the committee as being biased towards management and could undermine the committee's independence and credibility. What do you think of this, sir?
Good point. If you read my column of November last week, I mentioned several points that the so-called independent committees in general should have the majority of the members should be independent directors, and the chairman should be an independent director. In that respect, I think the change in the audit committee is a good one, because dati it was just pahapyaw lang yung function, the setting up of an audit committee. There's a section on board of directors policy, and then in one of the long list, item R, it will set up an audit committee. In this case, there's a fully worded function of the audit committee. And in fact, it's better than the wording of the risk management committee. No? Why do I say that? Some have the mistaken notion na dahil binawasan yung detailed functions ng risk management committee in the revised IRR, that is a bad thing.
Yes.
Actually, I agree. That move is actually correct because the goal of the law in the IRR is just to provide general guidelines, general milestones, general guideposts. And then it is now up to the inherent powers of the board to define exactly what constitutes best practice. In fact, for the Santiago principles, 24 principles that were formulated in Santiago, Chile in 2008, they just held a conference celebrating the 15th year of the Santiago principle. And then conclusion nila doon, the landscape and the rules of the game are changing. Therefore, it is not advisable na parang ima-micromanage mo na lahat ng detalya ay nakalagay na doon sa law at saka sa IRR. You should give leeway to the board to sort of be able to monitor and keep track of the so-called best practice and then adapt the same. Ngayon, pag masyadong detalya yung nilagay mo doon, wala nang flexibility ang board.
Alright. So, kumbaga, sir, bahala na yung board.
Embrace with the things. Yes.
All right. And another revision, sir, is the removal of additional qualifications of regular and independent directors of MIC. There were also changes in the qualifications of president and CEO and chief investment and operating officer. I think ito yung natanggal na yung mga higher educational attainment this time. Sir, what do you think of this?
Another good point. Another good
Why
point.
is that, sir?
I raised that question with the treasurer. So, talaga bang kailangan nyo itong additional nito? Because the only qualification naman is the members of the board should be very well qualified with a proper track record. Di ba? Marami na bang mga statesmen and mga lima, si Honorable Blas Ople, ni hindi ka gumraduate sa college yun eh. Di ba? So, that to me is pero the key point here, Maricel, is this. The law does not specify a graduate degree. But the IRR original specified a graduate degree. So, technically, the IRR cannot add a requirement that is not specified in the law.
I see. Okay,
So,
last point.
Ganun lang kasimple yun. The other joke that I had with the treasurer is, kung iimbitahin mo ako to be an independent director, sasabihin ko sa iyo, I am an undergrad only. I don't have a graduate degree. So if I am a member of your technical screening committee, I would disqualify me.
All right. Sir, last point. Once the MIC board is formed, what should be their first order of business? Ano ba yung mga challenges na inaasahan na kakaharapin nila?
Well, I have, in my column number 3, I'm proposing a roadmap. A roadmap that the first step is what are the pieces that would spell credibility. I think the appointment of the CEO is a big step in credibility. Kasi imagine ICTSI is an infrastructure business with 32 terminals in 9 countries in 6 continents. So they have a very good track record in dealing with so many jurisdictions, so many laws, and especially this is a long-term. This is a very long-term project, no. So I think just having that international experience over so many countries is a very good step already. The second step would be to have a very good, at least for the president and the advisory board, is to make sure that the rest of the board also have very good track records and are well respected in the industry. No? So I think the credibility is just like in the experience of Ireland, yung Margaret Fund nila, 2 levels yan eh. sino yung nagiging members ng the board, tapos sino yung mga magiging operating managers of specific projects, and the ability to attract the foreign investors and fellow strategic funds will depend in whether you have the right people, and number two, whether you have put together the right structure. That's why in my second column last week, I mentioned that there are key committees that needs to be formed by the board. So kahit wala siya sa law or kahit wala siya sa IRR, I mentioned that the board has inherent powers to form these committees. For example, the investment committee, the related party transactions committee that will surface any potential conflicts of interest with the management, the directors, and the staff of the MIC. Very, very important yan in establishing the credibility of the fund. Like in the Indonesia, they have an ethics committee, not in the board, but even in the supervisory board, where the chairman is the prime minister. No, a chief financial officer is not provided in the law or in the IRR, but it is important. A compliance committee should also be provided because sa dami-dami ng mga laws na dapat mong i-comply, the ESG and the 24 Principles of Santiago, you really need a full-time compliance function to monitor and make sure that the MIC, MIF is complying and aligning, not only complying, but really pursuing best practice in governance.
All right. Marami pong salamat sa inyo, Mr. Alex Escucha, President of the Institute of Development and Econometric Analysis, or IDEA. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Maricel Halili. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News, all sides, all the time.